various organizations, including business as well as civil society, are holding an online rally under the Defend Our Democracy banner. This follows the rejection of the Constitutional Court judgment by Jacob Zuma supporters. The rally is calling on organizations and political parties to respect the ConCourt judgment and not to destabilize the country. Let's go there live.
Should be our main focus, rather than increasing the number of our readers or viewers. We as journalists should resist the temptation to give prominence and publicity to political actors and others simply because they shout the loudest or make the most sensational claims or threats. The South African media will be tested in the days and weeks ahead. We as journalists will be judged harshly by history if we succumb to the temptation to be a part of the hysteria and lawlessness instead of being a sober, credible source of facts and truth. An informed public opinion is an essential ingredient of democracy, and society relies on us as journalists for that information, for context and analysis. Neutrality and objectivity can never mean simply reporting and repeating lies and fake news. Society has given us as media people considerable power. We should use it carefully and responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dupree. That was the word from the journalistic world to say facts are important. We must use facts and the truth to fight against, in fact, all of those who go out to distort the fact, to distort the truth in order to, in fact, mislead people in the wrong direction. Now, coming from academia, we have Professor Mabizela, who would now join us as well to give a perspective on the judgment from that side of the equation.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Compatriots, comrades and friends, this is a watershed moment for our country. This is a defining moment in the history of our young democracy. The seminal judgment handed down by our Constitutional Court on Tuesday marks an inflection point in our constitutional project. It was a stunning victory for the rule of law and a vindication of the supremacy of our Constitution. Once again, the justices of our Constitutional Court have demonstrated that our highest court in the land is our last bastion of hope and a fearless guardian of our Constitution. So we call on Mr. Zuma to abide by the judgment of the Constitutional Court. We also urge organizations, political and civil formations, and all South Africans to respect the judgment of the highest court of our land. We wish to make a special call on those of us in academia to take this as a teachable moment, a moment to reinforce the primacy of the rule of law and the supremacy of our Constitution. We also call on those of us who get to be invited by the media to provide commentary on the weighty matters of our nation, to resist the temptation to clothe with a semblance of legitimacy, credibility, or respectability, falsehoods, misinformation, and disinformation intended to confuse our society. We do ourselves no favors, nor do we do the academy any justice if we defend the indefensible. Now, Mr. Zuma has an unprecedented opportunity to show leadership and that he cares about this country and its people. First, he must call on all those who are gathered outside his homestead in Gandla to disperse as they are exposing themselves to the serious risk of contracting the coronavirus. This will show that he cares about the health, safety, and well-being of the people of this country. Is this too much to ask for? Certainly not. Second, He must distance himself from those who are beating drums of war, peddling false, misleading, and baseless claims in order to incite lawlessness, violence, and anarchy. Is this an unreasonable expectation of a leader? I don't believe so. Third, when the day comes, as it will, he must voluntarily and freely surrender himself to the law enforcement agencies of our country in obedience to the Constitution, to which he has sworn allegiance many times. Is this too much to expect of a leader? I don't think so. Comrades and friends, on this momentous occasion, let us take it as our individual and collective responsibility to defend, advance, and deepen our Constitution and our democracy wherever we are. Let us do it for the sake of our country. Let us do it as a fitting tribute to those who gave their all so we could live in a democracy. Let us do it for future generations. I thank you.
Thank you, Professor Siabonga. Obedience to our Constitution is non-negotiable. If you're unhappy with it, there is a legal and political process that you must embark upon to effect the changes that you want. To the extent that the Constitution is there, no person in the Republic has the right to actually play lotto with our Constitution. So I'm going to ask Ila Gandhi to step forward to give us a civil society response to this issue. And I don't need to emphasize why civil society is important. We know that in governance, government is as strong as the civil society over which it governs. And therefore, that arm of our people is as important as some of the formal arms that government has, that to reach the people in every corner of our land. For that, we raise our head to our civil society colleagues. Ila Gandhi, please speak to us.
Thank you, Program Director and fellow citizens. I dedicate this speech to the millions of our people who sacrifice their all so that all South Africans can enjoy a non-racial, democratic, just, and equitable order in this country. We remember and salute the mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, wives, husbands, and daughters and sons of the many freedom fighters, both men and women, who lost their lives for the establishment of our democracy and for the replacement of an unjust, oppressive apartheid system. Today, as we gather here to defend that democracy that was built on such great sacrifices, we once again ask our fellow South Africans, as we did in 1955, when the Freedom Charter was drawn up, what is it that you would like to see in our country? Those of us working on the ground hear the plea from the many poverty-stricken fellow human beings for peace from the ongoing violent order in our country, sustainable livelihoods, and a just and democratic order based on the principles of the Freedom Charter. A charter that was drawn up by the people and for the people, not for one or two individuals, but for all the people of our country, black and white. As we struggle to defend our hard-earned democracy in our country, we need to remember the fundamental principles on which our struggle was built. Democracy will naturally be threatened if money, power, and positions become the dominant narrative in place of the highest principles enshrined in our Constitution, in our scriptures, and in our Freedom Charter. The crafters of these documents recognize our interconnectedness, our interdependency, and our basic human rights and responsibilities. While we recognize that as human beings, we are all fallible, we also recognize that we all carry an inherent responsibility as well. That responsibility is to maintain law and order. So today we call on all those who may have forgotten the pledges we made as freedom fighters and as leaders of our community to bow to the laws of this country and accept the consequences with dignity and humility, which have been our guiding principles. Let us show our mettle by respecting and obeying the supreme law of this country, our Constitution. Laws are made, courts are set up, correctional services are organized, and police services are provided so that a democratic order can be seen in our country. To flout these institutions of justice is a travesty. We therefore now call on all those who held leadership positions of one kind or another to obey the rule of law, to remember that one's stature and dignity can only be enhanced if we have the mettle to accept the rule of law and to uphold a just order in which there are no exceptions to the rule and all are equal before the law. Of course, it is not easy, but true grit can only be revealed when we are able to supersede the fear of paying the price for justice to prevail. We say to all those who may have erred over the years that it is time now to accept the rule of law and pay the price with dignity. At the end, we earn the respect of our community simply by obeying the rules and regulations of justice. We must also commend the hundreds of thousands of active citizens around the country who came out in support of the campaigns against corruption. We owe gratitude to all the people's organizations, and I'll just cite a few, the Katrada and Mandela Foundations, the Active Citizens Movement, the Gandhi Development Trust, and many, many other community organizations who have rallied to the call to uphold our democratic values. At the same time, we call on those who feel that they have to protect the rights of their errant leaders to do so in dignity and peacefully, rather than flouting not only the laws of the country, but also endangering themselves and others by flouting the COVID-19 protocols. We say to them, set an example of dignity and discipline rather than chaos, incitement, and anarchy, an order into which our country can easily descend unless we help our government in upholding law and order. Mobilization of people, as in this rally, is important to draw attention to the need for a democratic order to prevail. We cannot allow the rule of anarchy, or as we see in many other countries, rule of private militia to prevail in our country. The importance of adherence to our Constitution and the maintenance of the integrity of our democracy are crucial at this stage when we see our democracy crumbling under the weight of rampant corruption and violence. We call on all the former leaders to once again take up the challenge to show their true grit by restraining their followers and through their own strength of character, humility, and acceptance of the rule of